Friday, 510 pesos. Saturday, 790 pesos. Sunday, 820 pesos. In what day is the ice cream sales lowest? Very good. The ice cream sales is lowest on Monday. In what day is the ice cream sales highest? You're right. The ice cream sales is highest on Sunday. What is the total weekly ice cream sales? You're right. The total weekly ice cream sales is 3,840. Based on the table, what can you infer about the ice cream sales? Very good. Based on the table, we can infer that the ice cream sales are high during weekends. Do you think there is another way of presenting the data in the table? Yes, there is another way of presenting the data in the table, such as using a graph or chart. Let's define some terms for the unlocking content area vocabulary. First is data. It is a collection of facts and figures that can be in numerical or non-numerical form. Next is data collection. Refers to the systematic process of gathering, measuring, and recording data. This may be done through surveys, interviews, and observations. Next is table. It is an arrangement of data, typically in rows and columns, that summarizes it in easy-to-understand format. Line graph. It is used to display data that shows change over time as series of data points connected by a straight line segments. Collecting, presenting, and interpreting data is all about gathering information, showing it in a way that's easy to understand, and then figuring out what the information means. Collecting data means gathering information or facts about something. For example, if you want to know how many students in your class like chocolate ice cream, you might ask everyone in the class and write down their answers. Next is presenting data. It is how we show the information we collected. You can present data in different ways, like using a chart, table, or graph. For example, after asking your class about ice cream flavors, you could make a bar graph to show how many students like chocolate, vanilla, or strawberry. Interpreting data means looking at the information you've gathered and trying to understand what it shows. For example, when you look at your graph of favorite ice cream flavors, you might see that most students like chocolate the best. This tells you that chocolate is the most popular flavor in your class. Here are the steps in presenting data in tabular form. In presenting data in tabular form, determine the needed number of columns and rows. Label properly the first row of the table depending on the data collected. You may also use the first column for this. Include a title that briefly describes the data presented. Here is an example. Jay Shell, a resident of Liliu, interviewed the owner of Badong's Footwear. to determine number of pairs of slippers they sold each month last 2022. According to the owner, they sold 125 pairs in January, 200 pairs in February, 175 pairs in March, 475 pairs in April, 50 pairs in May, 100 pairs in June, 300 pairs in July, 150 pairs in August, 150 pairs in September, 50 pairs in October, 350 pairs in November, and 400 pairs in December. Present the data collected using a table, just like the illustration given. For the first column, we have month, and for the second column, we have pairs. You may use 2 columns for the month and number of pairs sold and 13 rows. First row for the label and the remaining rows for the months. Then, you may use month and pairs for the label at the first row. Allow the learners to complete the data for each column. Lastly, include a title that briefly describes the table. Example of a title is Pairs of Slippers Sold Per Month, Year 2022. Here are the steps in presenting data in single line graph. In presenting data as a single line graph, draw a vertical scale with tick marks. Label the tick marks and give the scale a label. Draw a horizontal scale with tick marks. Label the tick marks and give the scale a label. Plot a dot in each data value. Connect the dots and give the graph a title. For example, your teacher in home economics wanted you to determine the number of sari-sari stores in the 6 barangays of your municipality. The table shows your observation. Number of sari-sari stores per barangay. For the first column, we have the barangay, and the second column, the sari-sari stores. In Kanlurang Bukal, we have 10 sari-sari stores. In Ilayang Palina, 3. Maslun, 5. Burgos, 7. Oples, 1. And Masikap, 4. Present the data using a single line graph. For the solution, first create a horizontal and vertical scale with tick marks. Label the tick marks and label the scale. Note, data presented as numbers should be in the horizontal scale. Just like the illustration given. In the horizontal line, we have the Kanlurang Bukal, Ilayang Palina, Maslun, Burgos, Oples, and Masikap. And for the vertical lines, we labeled it as the number of sari-sari stores. Next is to plot each data value, then connect it. Lastly, give it a title. For the title, we have sari-sari stores per barangay. Activity number 1. Draw and interpret. Instructions: analyze the given situation. Draw a line graph that represents the data on the table and answer the questions that follows. A mini zoo recorded the number of their visitors for 6 days. The table below shows their record. For day 1, they have 200 number of visitors. Day 2, 600 visitors. Day 3, 400 visitors. Day 4, 350 visitors. Day 5, 800 visitors. Day 6, 500 visitors. For the horizontal line, we have the days. And for the vertical lines, we have the number of visitors. For the title, we have Zoo Visitors. How many visitors were there on day 3? You're right, there were 400 visitors on day 3. How many more visitors were there on day 5 than on day 1? Very good. There were 600 more visitors on day 5 than on day 1. How many fewer visitors were there on day 6 than on day 2? You're right. There were 100 fewer visitors on day 6 than on day 2. How many days did the zoo have fewer than 500 visitors? The zoo had fewer than 500 visitors on 3 days, day 1, day 3, and day 4. If the ticket per visitor cost 150 pesos, how much is the ticket sale on day 1? You're right. The ticket sale on day 1 was 30,000 pesos. 200 visitors times 150 pesos. For learners' takeaways and reflection on learning, closing the loop. Instruction: answer the following questions. What are the key concepts of our lesson? Which part of the lesson is the easiest for you? Why? Which part of the lesson is the hardest for you? Why? How are we as a class today? For your formative assessment, interpret it. Instructions: analyze the situation presented on a line graph. After that, answer the questions that follows. Here is the line graph and titles car sales. For the horizontal, we have the days Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And for the vertical lines, we have the numbers of cars sold. How many cars were sold in 5 days? On which day were the maximum number of cars sold? How many days did George have sold cars fewer than 6? How many more cars were sold on Tuesday than on Monday? If a car cost 850,000 pesos, how much did he sell on Tuesday? Let us now answer. How many cars were sold in 5 days? You're right. George sold a total of 27 cars in 5 days. On which day were the maximum number of cars sold? Very good. The maximum number of cars were sold on Friday. How many days did George have sold cars fewer than 6? You're right. George sold fewer than 6 cars on 3 days. Number 4. How many more cars were sold on Tuesday than on Monday? You're right. He sold 2 more cars on Tuesday than on Monday. Number 5. If a car cost 850 pesos, Number 5. If a car cost. Number 5. If a car cost 850,000 pesos, how much did he sell on Tuesday? Very good. On Tuesday, George sold cars worth 4,250,000 pesos. 5 cars times 850,000 pesos.